Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. Some housekeeping tips as you join us. This is an interactive webinar, so feel free to use the QR code or the link in the chat to add comments and answer questions on the interactive Padlet. We have the PDF of the presentation already saved on that Padlet, so you can follow along. We will be collecting questions through the Q&A feature in the Zoom and creating an FAQ document that we will be sharing along with this presentation with participants after the webinar. If anyone needs captions, feel free to select and show the Show Captions feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So I just want to say welcome to the Intro to RBIS webinar, or Research-Based Instructional Strategies. As part of our broader strategy to significantly increase the number of students in Texas who have access to high-quality instructional materials, or HQIM, the Texas Education Agency has developed a set of research-based instructional shifts. These shifts are essential for creating high-quality, rigorous lessons. The RBIs form the foundation of the instructional materials review and approval process, which assess high-quality instructional materials in Texas, including the approved Open Education Resource instructional materials. Today's Intro to RBIs session is an early opportunity to support you as you prepare for implementation of the House Bill 1605 requirements related to candidate training to use OER instructional materials. Our webinar facilitators are from TNTP, an organization that has been working closely to support HQIM and RBIS initiatives for local education agencies. They are now helping bring these important topics to the EPP space. Just so you know, my name is Allie Nichols. I am the manager of Educator Preparation Instructional Materials Strategy. I work under Melissa Yoder and Jessica McLaughlin in the Department of Educator Preparation, Certification, and Enforcement. We are so excited to be here with you all and want to be mindful of your time. So Kanika, please kick us off.
Thank you, Allie, for that introduction. I am Kanika Vessel. I am a director with TNTP and just so excited to be here with you all this morning for this introduction to RBs and how it's going to relate and support you all within the EPP. And my co-presenter, I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Pearson. I'm also director here at TNTP. I'm thrilled to be with you this morning. I have had the opportunity to work closely with TEA on the RBs for the last several years and traveled to all of 20 educational service center regions across the state and support the training and redelivery of districts. So really excited to dive into the research here with you and give you an overview on the RBs.
Right, so our session today is going to focus on three key areas. What are the RBs in math and RLA? What is the research saying about the RBs and how they provide access to grade level instruction for all students? And when we say all meaning all. And then how do the RBs work together to prepare teacher candidates to provide grade level instruction from day one? And so let's get started with what are the research-based instructional strategies, what you'll hear us say throughout the session, RBs. And so let's talk about what they are and what they are not. And so the RBs are a set of research-based practices that highlight misconceptions that are most common in the field. They are topics that sometimes require conceptual or philosophical changes to how we approach instruction. They are a set of practices that are supported by research and should be present in classrooms regardless of the instructional materials that are being used. And based in the science of students best learn math and reading in K through 12 classrooms. So for the RBs, we have RBs that have been developed specifically for the content areas of reading language arts and math, and they are listed here. I will point out that there are some commonalities between the two, so you will see that there are 4 in each for RLA as well as math. And I want you to take a moment just to review the topics that are under the RLA and math headings as a preview of what this session will overview and what we will focus on in this session. It is not important to understand the nuances at this moment, but we will go more in depth throughout this session. In the Padlet, there's as Ali said earlier, we have some reflection questions in the Padlet. And so in the Padlet, we have a question for you to think about as you are looking, as you think about the teacher candidates or your EPP program. What questions are you forming around RBs and HQIM? And you can just go ahead and drop your responses in the Padlet. I see in the Padlet brain-based learning, actual classroom experience rather than textbook knowledge. I'm liking what I see. And as we continue, just feel free. The Padlet's going to be open to go ahead and just drop your reflections there. So as I said earlier, today's session is going to focus on 3 things. What are the RBs, or the research-based instructional strategies? Why the RBs? They provide equitable opportunities for all students to have access to on-grade level instruction. And then how can we ensure students are provided equitable? And we're going to leave here with a better understanding of how the RBs work at every level of the educational landscape. And so as we go through this session, I want you to think about what you may need and the needs of your teacher candidates right now and how the RBs can support them. And just be thinking about that, jot those down. We're going to have the reflection questions throughout the session, and feel free to go ahead and add that there in the Padlet as well. So let's start by considering how the RBs fit into the current educational landscape. And so schools are tasked with providing on-grade level experiences for all students. On-grade level means that students should be given an opportunity to work within the rigor of their age and grade level standards. It is our hope that educators at every level hear the research and the rationale behind the RB so that we can work together to support the success and opportunities we want to be true for all students. What are some of the pieces of the puzzle we should consider? And so in the Padlet, you have a space there where you can jot down those ideas about what are some of the pieces of the puzzle that we should consider. Trying to take a look at the Padlet to see responses. Okay, not quite yet, still thinking, and that's okay. But as we go, just think about what are some of the pieces of the puzzle that we should consider. And this first piece of the puzzle, we're going to be talking about the RBs. And I just want to say here that the current educational landscape is complex. And we are all here with the goal of providing stronger academic experiences for all students. And the RBs are the why. They set the foundation for all of the puzzle pieces to come in supporting students. So let's start by considering our why. Why do we need to talk about these research-based instructional strategies? And the reality is that often school experiences are not setting up students or all students to pursue their post-secondary goals and dreams. And teachers are a huge part of that. Without going into too much detail, since this is just an overview, know that there's extensive research that has identified instructional practices that are necessary for teacher toolkits. And that's why everyone here is so important. You have a direct line to what the teacher candidates are learning. RBs play a critical role in leveling the playing field, recovering lost learning, and developing new skills and concepts. One major study that was conducted in 2009 by the South Carolina Department of Education, it looked at 250,000 assignments in 326 public schools and found that as grade levels advance, assignments fall further and further below standard. And more recently, a study by the Education Trust reported that only 38% of assignments are on grade level. And I'll just make a statement here that any of the research that we reference, if you go to the agenda that's in the Padlet, there are the links for the research are there as well. So feel free in your own time to dive into the research that we mentioned throughout the session today. RBs are grounded in research and provide ways to ensure on-grade level experiences for all students. There's a complementary relationship between RBs and on-grade level work. These are necessary parts of the puzzle that we described earlier. By putting this puzzle together piece by piece, we influence the choices that can make the difference between students realizing their dreams or leaving them unfulfilled. Our why for this session is that we can provide stronger and more equitable learning opportunities for all students, but it has to start here. On-grade level work means that work both supports the depth and the rigor of the standards. Now that we've discussed why the RBs, let's consider the how. How the RBs address current challenges that schools face, like student learning loss, teacher burnout, equity gaps. Schools are facing more challenges than ever, and teachers alone cannot be responsible for fixing it. The RBs aim to offset some of the biggest challenges educators face today. What are some other challenges you think of that you can think of based on your own experiences? And there's a space in the Padlet where you can jot down your reflections. What are some of those other challenges that you can think of based on your experiences that we may not have on this slide or we've talked about yet? And I'm going to hop over here to the Padlet and see what reflections we have. I see someone share scripted lessons, lack of planning time, large number of students in classrooms, lack of resources, testing culture, English only materials, pacing on many HQIMs make it difficult for teachers to stay within their time block, or scripting makes it difficult for teachers to differentiate, especially for new teachers. Students who need accommodations and interventions are not mentioned in the HQIMs. And so I really, really appreciate all that you all are sharing in here. Really valuable. And so that just goes to show you, as we're saying, that the RBs are really meant to address these current challenges. And so as we consider the current realities that our schools face, the goal of the RBs is to create clear goalposts and to support all teachers and leaders with common language and tools for reaching our goals. response to the current realities is to look to experts in the field and research. The RBs are intentionally grounded in research and best practices. To embrace the RBs, it is important to call upon the mindset of, when we know better, we do better. And how often have we heard that throughout life? When we know better, we do better. On this slide, we can see two important research points made during RB sessions that inform teaching and learning in K-12 math and RLA, respectively. The math quote is speaking to the work in Math RBs 1, which is balancing the conceptual and procedural math learning that's needed. The RLA quote is pointing to a necessary practice of centering grade level complex text. While this session is an overview of the RBs, we find it important to spotlight some of the research in these sessions to give you a glimpse of the ideas that we hope educators can grapple with together. During these sessions, participants discuss important ideas based in research, like, how does this research support your teacher candidates be able to reach a diverse group of students when they get in the classroom? Or how does this research motivate you to provide experiences where they can grapple with these practices? Ultimately, the RBs use the research to reflect and refine our instructional frameworks, our school-wide goals, and even our teacher development plans. So let's revisit the RLA and math RBs that I mentioned or showed earlier in the session. Do any of these look familiar or surprising to you? And just remember that they're not meant to be topics commonly agreed upon, like materials should be aligned to the standards, or topics unrelated to curriculum and instructional materials like classroom management best practices. Remember that the RBs, they are a set of research-based practices that highlight misconceptions that are common in the field. Topics that sometimes require conceptual or philosophical changes. They are a set of practices that are supported by research and should be present in classrooms, regardless of the instructional materials that are being used. And they are based in the science of how students best learn math and reading. And so what we're going to do now is dive into the RLA and the math RBs. And so we're going to start with the RLA RBs.
All right. Thank you, Kanika. And I'm excited to walk y'all through an overview of our RLA RBs. So let's take a look at our RLA content-based RBs to understand how they can improve student outcomes. So here you can see the four of them. We're going to go through them each one by one momentarily, but I want to pause here to give you a minute to read the brief description to yourself, and you'll notice a couple of key phrases in bold for each of these RBs. Now let's start taking a look at what these look like. We're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive. Foundational skills. RBs 1 is all about reading foundational skills. It calls on teachers to provide a systematic and structured approach to learning how to read. It highlights the rationale about how the brain learns to read, and then practices to prioritize in the classroom. Think about the foundation of a house and how it sets the stage for what is going to be built upon. Similarly, when it comes to literacy, these foundational skills provide the opportunity for students to best learn how to read, so they can then build upon that with their knowledge and comprehension skills. You'll notice, for example, here's on a decodable reader. Tools like that decodable reader that you can see on this slide are essential to RBs 1 because it allows students to practice the specific skills they've been taught in class within the context of reading. And once we have that foundation in place, let's take a look at RBIS 2. RBIS 2, complex text. It points to the rationale for how and why teachers can provide students access to grade level complex texts. We know from the research this is a key predictor of success for college and career. And by focusing on RBIS 2, on making meaning of the text, we support teachers with scaffolding students up and into grade level texts, as opposed to holding them back in lower level texts. For example, leveled readers can be a great approach for tier 2, tier 3 supports. The challenge is when level readers serve as tier 1 instructional materials and supports, because students often then never get the opportunity to engage in grade level complex text. You'll notice here in the HQIM example on the side that this provides teachers and those who train and support teachers with actionable strategies to internalize the lesson and then appropriately help scaffold students into accessing this grade level text as a tier 1 resource. Let's take a look at our next RBIS here, knowledge coherence. The goal of this one is to build students' vocabulary and content knowledge intentionally over time. This supports teachers by being able to highlight cross-curricular vocabulary. So for example, students are studying in the units that are highlighted here. There's connections throughout kindergarten through 5th grade, science, social studies that also show up in the RLA classroom. And it calls on us to move away from teaching skills in isolation. Ultimately, RBIS 3 is about engaging all students in building knowledge and vocabulary through text. And think about the ripple effect for students in a K-12 setting if we're able to build that knowledge over time within and across grade levels. It'll be like compound interest for their learning. Let's take a look at our final one here, text-based responses. In text-based responses, this is our 4th and final RBIS, but it ensures that students are experiencing the opportunities to write, to discuss ideas related to the grade level text. You can see the call out there in the yellow box of an example of what that looks like. But RBIS 4 provides a clear rationale for why do we need to support more explicit writing instruction and begin to capitalize on the reciprocal relationship of reading and writing or thinking and speaking in order to help students make meaning of grade level text. You'll notice a theme that the RBIS and these HQIM examples are designed for intentional instruction to help ensure that on grade level instruction is happening for all students. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Kanika to walk us through the math RBIS overview.
Thank you, Matt. We're going to take some time now and dive into the K-12 best practices for math, the math RBIS. These RBIS, similar to the RLA RBIS, are meant to work together to provide on grade level experiences and are more powerful together than in isolation. And so similar to what we did for the RLA RBIS, I want you to take a moment and to just read over these brief descriptions of each of the math RBIS. You'll notice some things in bold that are called out, and we'll dive into each of those math RBIS in just a moment. So we're going to start with our first math RBIS, which is balanced conceptual and procedural understanding. And so Let's consider how Bluebonnet Learning K-5 Math guides students through a series of activities connecting the use of visual models to the standard algorithm as they multiply a one-digit number by a multi-digit number. We've already looked at, or really this references TEKS 4.4C and 4.4D, which specifically calls out for students to use strategies and algorithms, including the standard algorithm, to multiply up to a 4-digit number by a 1-digit number, and to multiply a 2-digit number by a 2-digit number. And so if you notice the topic overview here, as you read through it, think about which parts of it convey conceptual understanding and which parts convey the procedural fluency. Give you just a quick moment. So this first section really speaks to the conceptual understanding, while the second section speaks to the procedural understanding. So within an HQIM like Bluebonnet Learning K-5 Math, conceptual understanding is addressed before procedural fluency so that students can build a strong foundation. Now, Math RBIS 2, which is depth of key concepts, focuses attention on the research and value of dedicated time and effort in certain math topics. We see how students build the stamina to engage deeply in mathematical thinking and discussions. RBIS 2 requires us to consider how materials are designed to sequence math learning so that we return to key topics enough to reach the depth of understanding needed for each grade level. So notice in this graphic, we see the intentional time spent with number sense in grade 1. You can see that when you look alongside of it of kindergarten, there is more time, intentional time that's spent on the topic of numbers in grade 1 versus kindergarten. And even looking at measurement and geometry in kindergarten, there is more intentional time spent on that in kindergarten versus in grade 1. And so these are things to consider. What are those focal key areas in each grade level that are necessary in order to build a foundation of math understanding from year to year? Math RBIS 3, coherence of key concepts, means math learning is intentionally scoped and sequenced to ensure a clear, connected story happens within and across years of math learning. So what you see here is a coherence example of geometry and measurement. Here we can see how coherence is built within grade levels, from one grade to the next, and over time. In kindergarten, students are introduced to measurement through the comparison of length, weight, capacity, and numbers to 10. This builds to second and third grade, where students are solving more complex measurement problems using addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Ultimately, in 5th grade, students apply the knowledge and skills to calculate volume and area. Here, their conceptual understanding of length, width, height, and capacity are strong, and they are able to focus on the computation methods to find area and volume. This example from this HQIM demonstrates coherence across grade levels, but also helps us to understand how the modules are connected within a grade level. Coherence complements depth because it makes it possible the opportunity to reach the depth of the TEKS over time. When coherence is in action, teachers can still skillfully fill gaps in learning, accelerate within grade level work, and support all students to engage in on grade level math. And here is our final math RBs. RBs 4, productive struggle, which calls on teachers to provide students time to collaboratively problem solve using different representations, and then asking them to explain their thinking. Tasks like the one pictured here have multiple entry points so that students can use different solution paths to solve and make connections. Acknowledging with students' effort on RBs 4, the fourth and final math RBs, support students to do the thinking of the lesson, thus developing their capacity to persevere in the face of challenging content. I just want to note here with productive struggle, we're talking about how with proper scaffold supports this sets this teacher and students up for success. This could be could often be seen as a misconception when we think about productive struggle. We're really honing in on those scaffolds and support so that the teachers and the students are both set up for this success, not just for students to just struggle to struggle. If they're just struggling, then they're not going to reach success. And so we want to provide those tools and support so that they can persevere when they get to that challenging content. So now that we have seen some examples of the math and RLA RBs, let's consider how the RBs works with HQIM to support mastery of on-grade level standards. So what do we mean by HQIM? HQIM are instructional materials that can make a difference for student achievement. Research shows that students learn primarily through their interactions with teachers and content, and that quality curriculum influences classroom practice and ultimately student outcomes. For example, a 2018 study illustrated that teachers using standards-aligned materials engage students in mathematical practices at a significantly higher rate than teachers who did not use an aligned curriculum. On this slide, you can see the HQIM is defined as core materials, and they're designed to cover 100% of the TEAC standards in a particular grade and subject for the full year. Some of the components you see listed include course level materials, teacher-facing unit and lesson materials, and student-facing materials. The state of Texas has a SBOE HQIM approved list, and this list is also in the resources section within the Padlet. So you're able to go there and see that list. And just know that there's a lot of HQIM out there, but we encourage you to look at all the materials. If you're using an HQIM and it supports all of the ideas that are in these boxes that we're talking about and ensures alignment, then think back to the RBs that we just reviewed. Without an aligned set of instructional materials, think how hard it would be for an individual teacher to create depth and coherence within and across subjects or grade levels. Think about that for math as well as RLA. When teachers are in the classroom and they don't have these aligned materials, how difficult that experience is for not just them, but also the students. And think about what are the students missing out on, what content, what learning that they're not going to be engaged in. RBs and HQIM work together to provide on-grade level instruction. The idea here is that when teachers don't have access to great materials, they spend valuable time searching for them online or create the content themselves. A 2017 RAND analysis found that 96% of teachers use Google, and 75% of teachers use Pinterest to find lessons and materials. These materials are mostly unvetted and of varying quality. Inconsistent access to aligned materials impacts student learning in schools across Texas, but particularly hits schools that have a higher proportion of low income and students of color the most, perpetuating inequities and opportunity gaps. House Bill 1605 was recently passed and is the legislature's intent to ground curriculum in research-based practices. This bill seeks to increase access to high-quality instructional material for students, support teachers by reducing their workload related to material development, and provide transparency for parents. The bill also establishes allotments for certain instructional materials. House Bill 1605 lays out several requirements for EPPs related to training and preparation of teacher candidates. The SBEC has developed requirements for EPPs to train candidates to understand and use open education resource materials. This requirement is in Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 228, EPP requirements. To that end, the code also prevents EPPs from providing instruction on the 3 cueing method during foundational reading skill instruction. And finally, the statute requires the agency to develop training to assist EPPs to implement candidate training to use OER. And with these requirements, the agency is in the process of developing training for the use of these materials, including today's session. All training will be tailored to the needs of educator preparation programs and includes implementation support beyond attending face-to-face training. The agency will release more information shortly on upcoming opportunities. RBs really lay the foundation for many of the initiatives and supports we need in order to respond to the current realities our schools face. When teacher candidates are trained in the RBs and using HQIM, we are in a better position to bring grade level instruction to all students all of the time. At the state level, implementation and supports are provided. At the EPP level, teaching and training for teacher candidates should be implemented with fidelity with authentic experiences. We can train all of our educators in the RBs. We can provide our school districts with high quality instructional materials. We can put on grade level work in front of our students, but these 3 things alone will not guarantee improved student outcomes. These 3 things alone will not ensure that our students are equipped to pursue their post-secondary goals and dreams. Stakeholders who are invested in the education and futures of Texas students are vital to making this happen, bringing all of the pieces together and completing the picture. Think about how your work connects to these 3 things. Where do you fit in? What do you want for your teacher candidates, and how can we support you in bringing this to life? How can we prepare teacher candidates to recognize HQIM and advocate for its usage in the schools and districts that they will be in the future? So there is a space in the Padlet for you all to share your reflections around those questions. What do you want for your teacher candidates, and how can we support you in bringing this to life? And how can we prepare teacher candidates to recognize HQIM and advocate for its usage? So I'm going to give you a moment to just share your reflections in the Padlet there before we continue. The next piece that we'll share is an example from the field. So before we dive into the example, I just want to give you a moment to share your reflections in the Padlet. And I'm going to hop over to the Padlet to see what has been shared about where do you fit in with this work? What do you want for your teacher candidates, and how can we support you in bringing this to life? And how can you help provide teacher candidates with experiences to become confident in the RBs? And you may still be thinking on that, and that's okay. Know that the Padlet is here and you can come back to share your reflections there. We really just want to hear from you. How can we support you? What are you thinking about right now so that as we are preparing trainees to support EPPs, we're taking all of this into consideration.
Hi, Kanika. I just wanted to add, I've been seeing a lot of questions in the chat about accessing the resources on the Padlet. So when you're navigating the Padlet, sorry, if you go to the session materials at the very left side of the Padlet and scroll down, you will see the link to the approved HQIM list. And to learn more about the IMRA process, there's a link there as well.
Allie, for sharing that. And so I see some reflections here in the Padlet. One says we need this to be a central part of our lesson planning curriculum, those pre-service hours. Love that. Access to HQIMs, yes, that's key in order for this to happen. I want our candidates to be confident in delivering high quality instruction due to a well-developed understanding of the RVs. Yes, including this terminology and language and coaching conversations with teacher candidates. All of this is, I'm loving this. All of this that you're saying and sharing is right on point. This is key. And this is why we're here today, providing this overview of the RBs because it is valuable. It is a foundation. And so we needed to share this with you all. This is why we are working on the training, the upcoming training that will be shared in the future to really address the things that you all are saying right here on the Padlet. So I am going to turn it over to my co-host, Matt, who is going to share with us an example from the field.
Awesome. Thank you, Kanika. And like she shared, it is exciting to see your reflections and knowing the critical role that you play. We wanted to share an example from the field as an example of how another EPP provider went about beginning to make some of these shifts and some lessons learned that they shared from their experience. So you could begin to think from their journey, what might work within our context. So first of all, thank you to our provider on our next slide here, Dallas College, who shared some lessons learned with us. They are an educator prep program that was commended for seeking innovative ways to prepare candidates for the classroom by TEA. Some of the lessons learned about their journey and process you'll see highlighted here. They moved towards some of the shifts that HB 1605 is calling on all of us to make, and have some lessons learned for us. They worked with their partner LEAs and stakeholders to create a paid teacher residency model. And they're one of the largest community college systems in the state. And they focused on developing greater understanding of HQIM and the research-based instructional strategies behind it that would support residents placed in districts using HQIM in response to that need. So let's see a couple strategies that they did. The first strategy here was really engaging their faculty in the why, training them in what is the research behind the key shifts necessary. So they were taught not just the overview, but in depth, the research-based instructional strategies, more of the data behind HQIM. They spoke to this as a turning point for faculty members because until then, it could have been a little difficult to grasp, like, why are we making these moves? Why are we making these shifts? And why was it important to get on board with the initiative? And once that buy-in set the stage for what we'll highlight in the next couple of slides about making changes to help support this becoming an essential part of the process. So the faculty really embraced the direction and went into some hands-on work and appreciated the hands-on work then once they started out with that clarity on the why. So think about our why, how, what that we started with here. They led with the why of the training. Now let's look at what they did after they had shared that why. And just to name, as we pull out a couple key things here, we're going to zoom out after these slides with some of aspects of their journey. I also want to name that a lot of this work was happening simultaneously and not necessarily sequentially, even though we're presenting it sequentially here on the slides. For example, they embedded HQIM in their math courses early in the program and started engaging faculty in discussion about HQIM as they did so. That was prior to a larger scale training that was a turning point. So they already kind of started with a small group. And a key thing they would highlight here is it's important for programs, all programs, to think about where it makes sense to start and how to engage faculty along the way. So for example, after having that why, faculty were provided new curricular materials and supported in implementing those materials within their coursework. The RBIS and HQIM were embedded and explicitly taught so that teacher candidates could be prepared to implement Tier 1 instruction based on a deep understanding through internalization, analysis of focus, coherence, and rigor. And by supporting faculty to do this step, this really was to the benefit of multiple stakeholders: faculty, the candidates, the districts they served, and teacher candidates then had experience analyzing, internalizing, preparing to implement HQIM lessons with support and coaching from faculty. Teacher candidates were then ahead of the game as they navigated their first-year teacher experience, particularly in districts where they were using HQIM, because they had a deep understanding of the RBIS and HQIM. So that's an example of how they then used that why to update their coursework to help achieve alignment. And then let's look at what they did in the field. So getting out into the field to observe and coach accelerated the understanding and buy-in that had been built through the training and support of embedding within the coursework. Being in the field gave Dallas College the opportunity to see firsthand what materials were being used and how those materials were being used. So they continue, this is a continual process, right? On the know better, do better part, they continue to add to and refine their tools based on what they're seeing in the field. Here's what they have done, and here's what's coming up next. What they have done is they redesigned their observation tool to center the RBIS as look-fors. And they made sure to include a component around preparing for instruction through lesson internalization. This also led to the feedback candidates received during their year-long residencies were grounded in the RBIS and reinforced the importance of planning for instruction with HQIM. As part of that continuous improvement process, residents now plan and internalize HQIM lessons with mentors for pre-observation planning. So you can see here, faculty are coaching, supporting their candidates with field-based observation tools that align to the updated coursework and the practice. It creates a cohesive experience for all the stakeholders. Teacher candidates know what's expected. Their observation tool reflects their training and practice, and the feedback is aligned to set them up for success in the field. The faculty observing and coaching accelerated that understanding and buy-in because they were seeing firsthand exactly the knowledge of how the materials that their teacher candidates were using were being used in the field. So one thing that just this year they added to their pre-observation planning form was that residents are required to complete before faculty observations because they noticed that not all of their residents were yet consistently engaging in planning and internalization with a mentor. The form aligned with HQIM competencies, and it reinforced the internalization process as well as the collaboration piece with their mentor. So now let's zoom out from the journey and story that they were kind enough to share with us and highlight. Let's look at, now that we know more about the RBIS and we've seen an example from the field, of how they went about it. Some themes that they shared that resonated with us was training faculty in the research and the why behind the shifts towards HQIM, aligning coursework to reflect the RBs, embedding the HQIM, and explicitly teaching less internalization to prepare. And again, their advice was consider what is needed and best for your context. They started with one content area to begin. They redesigned their walkthrough tool to provide residents aligned feedback in both the RBs and HQIM. And we want to give time now in the Padlet. Now you know more about the RBs, and you can see on the left side of your screen there some of the things that Dallas College did. What would you want to try for your context? We would love to make the space and pause here for you to go to the Padlet and add in your responses about what of these might you want to consider for your context. And as you're completing your thoughts in the Padlet, I just wanted to speak to one question that did surface in the chat here. And there's a great question about, are school districts and administrators being trained on this information? Because it could be challenging to support candidates if the districts and administrators are not being trained. And the answer to that is an overwhelming yes. In fact, over 20% of Texas school districts to date have been trained in the research-based instructional strategies. And next month, there's going to be the next cycle of LASSO grant awards going out to districts that will support them learning about the research and receiving support adopting or implementing HQIM, which means that hundreds more districts across the state will be receiving training from the district administrator level so they can be clear on what does this research look like in classrooms, instructional materials, and then the support alignment will feel even more cohesive as that continues to spread. So great question there. We can get you precise numbers, but just know that currently over 20% of Texas school districts have been trained in this research, and that is only going to increase as the next round of LASSO cycle grants are awarded to more districts across the state of Texas. I think I mentioned at the beginning, I've had the opportunity to travel to all 20 regional education service centers. So our fastest growing urban areas to our awesome rural areas. And there are certified RBs trainers in every part of Texas. There are over 340 certified RBs trainers who have been actively supporting teachers and educators in the field. That's only going to grow. So just wanted to answer that question as I'm seeing some awesome takeaways here on the knowing more about what you would want to try for your context.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you sharing that example. And then I just wanted, one of the questions I saw in the Padlet was about if teacher candidates are placed in districts that aren't using HQIM. And so that's the question that we even discussed amongst ourselves as well. And that's something that is important because we know the possibility of that happening. But one of the things that we are being intentional about in the trainings that we are developing is helping support the EPP faculty as well as the teacher candidates in being able to know like what constitutes a HQIM? What are those qualities? What should I see? What are those things? And then when that isn't there, what are the things or what are the steps that I need to do or take to ensure that I am still providing high quality instruction to my students because that's what's important as well. And so know that all the takeaways that you are sharing, which are really great, are things that we've been talking about as well. And we want to ensure that we're taking all those things into consideration as we are designing and developing these future trainings for you all for the EPPs. And so, want to come back to what the goals for today's session were. And so, one of the goals was to talk about what are the RBs, why the RBs, and then also the how. And so, one of the reasons we had this session today was really to just help orient you to the RBs. And success is you're being able to leave here and explain why the RBs were constructed, what they are, and how can we ensure students are provided with more equitable on grade level instructional opportunities in classrooms across Texas. Helping others understand that the RBs and HQIM work together to provide access to on grade level instruction for all students at every level. And, when we look at this Padlet, those are the thoughts, those are the things that you all are sharing. And I believe and can see that you all can see the why and are getting an understanding of what they are and how. And you're already thinking about what are the steps, what are the things that we need to consider, what are my takeaways, what might need to be considered within the content that I teach or the layout of the coursework. And so it sounds, what has been shared that you all are on track with the goals from the session today. And it was just really to gain a high level understanding of the RBs to take it into your work with teacher candidates. And that is certainly there based on your reflections. And so I want to thank you all for your time and attention and just looking forward to reviewing the rest of your reflections in the Padlet as well as the exit ticket that we'll have for you in a moment. But I do want to give a chance to Allie and Melissa if there's anything that you all might want to share as we are wrapping up this session today.
Kanika and Matt, thank you so much for facilitating today. And thank you to everyone for all of your thoughtful responses on the Padlet. A lot of, and these wonderful questions in the Q&A. We will be rolling all of your questions up, as Ali has noted in the chat, to provide you a comprehensive FAQ from this session so we can provide answers to y'all to support you in your journey. And just wanted to double down on Kanika's note about forthcoming training for educator preparation programs. We'll be launching more information shortly about some upcoming opportunities to engage in training for your faculty in the RBs and the OER products. So thank you all so much for attending today, and we look forward to the continued work around the RBs and our HQIM OER products.
I'll add that we did see a question about how long the Padlet will remain open. And so we're definitely going to keep it open for at least a week. We're not closing it anytime soon. So feel free to bookmark some of those resources that you see. And so you should make in the PowerPoint deck will be linked there as well, but we'll be sharing out an email to all participants with the link to the recording, the presentation, and any of the resources that we shared. So
And
you'll
just
get that.
to back up Allie's note, we will be posting all of this to the program provider resource page, as we do with our trainings, and then it will post to the EPP newsletter. And once that's posted, we'll also make sure y'all have that information too. So it'll all live in one concise place.